autoregulation is normally if you go to the gym, oftentimes you'll write yourself a program, right? And whatever the program says, you do, irrespective of how you feel and irrespective of how your performance actually is. So autoregulation takes into account your performance and it takes into account how you feel. And there's a lot of different ways that you can autoregulate. So we went over 3 studies so far, and tomorrow we'll go over the last study. The first study we talked about was what's called flexible periodization. And normal periodization is, especially daily periodization, is you're going to essentially have different days in which you're training, different types of training regimens. So for example, Monday, your training regimen might be heavy. Wednesday, your training regimen might be a light workout. Friday, your training regimen might be a heavy workout. And so that's periodization. Flexible periodization is a little bit different in the fact that you're going to get all 3 of those training sessions in, but the difference between them is that you'll train based on your capacity that day. So if I come in on Monday and I travel a lot. So I came back from Vegas like 2 weeks ago. Monday, if my day was heavy, I'm probably going to feel pretty bad if I just came back from Vegas. And if I felt bad, I'm going to do my light day that day. If Wednesday I'm almost recovered, I do my moderate day. And if Friday I'm 100%, I do my hardcore day that day on Friday. So that's kind of the key. What research has shown is that if I have to do those training sessions in the week, but I perform them when I'm best, that actually will get the most robust response. I'll get better gains in hypertrophy, better gains in strength. So that's called flexible daily undulating periodization, and that's a form of autoregulation, and you're autoregulating based on how you feel. Another form of autoregulation was really proposed by man. Now, really, if you look a lot in the powerlifting world, bodybuilders maybe not so much. Bodybuilders oftentimes will go like, I'm going to do 8 to 12 reps. But oftentimes, powerlifters will go on a percentage of their 1RM. So I'm going to hit 10 reps at 70% of my 1RM. I'm going to hit 5 reps at 85% of my 1RM today. Okay? But what if you hit 5 reps at 85% of your, what if you're able to hit far more than 5 reps on your on 85% of your 1RM? Like what if you're able to get 10 reps on 85% of your 1RM? You're not going to just do the program sequence. A fixed repetition scheme, or what if instead of hitting 5, what if you hit 3 and your partner says, no, we're just going to get you through this. You're going to get 5 by force repping you. And you keep doing that every set. That's fixed reps. Auto-regulation, if you got more than the 5, you'd adjust the next set to a higher repetition schema. If you got less than 5, you lower the weight on the next set. So it's auto-regulating based on your performance that day, etc., etc. So that's called auto-regulating based on your strength, that day, and instead of just what you project. And if you auto-regulate based on that, man actually found in Division I football players, they got way better strength gains. So I think that's key to understand. The next thing that you want to understand is if you auto-regulate based on failure, so in other words, like if I go to failure on 5 repetitions, or if I hit 5 repetitions and I really can get 10, and I go to failure, adjusting the next set might not be ideal because I failed on that set. So is there a way to project, instead of saying, oh, I got 10 reps and failed, is there a way to project before I go to failure? There's a scale basically where it's called repetitions left to failure scale. And that would be a way to auto-regulate without going to failure, but adjusting in real time. So essentially, what you end up doing is, you go in to the set, and what you end up doing is, you go, okay, I was supposed to hit 5 sets of 5. I just did 5 reps, but I'm supposed to be coming close to failure in every set. I just hit 5 reps, But in my mind, even though that was what the percentage I was supposed to work out, I know I could have got 4 more repetitions, okay? Because of that, the next set I'm going to adjust up 5 pounds. Instead of failing and getting 4 more repetitions, the next set I'm going to adjust up 5 pounds. So, so that's key to sort of understand. Now, going off that, that actually, studies have shown that we're very good, especially if you're well trained, at making those projections. The last scale that we're going to talk about tomorrow is something called the Perceived Recovery Status Scale. And the Perceived Recovery Status Scale was basically invented by a guy named Laurent. And basically, in our lab has done a couple of studies on Perceived Recovery Status Scale. It's a scale from 0 to 10, and basically 0 is like death. I'm talking about like 0 means that you literally have the flu, and or you literally, it was you literally partied for 3 days straight and you can't move, right? That is this Perceived Recovery Status Scale. So essentially, that Perceived Recovery Status Scale is, again, a scale of 0 to 10. 10 is, there's the wall, I'm going to bust through that wall right now. Like, I could break that wall, okay? I will hit a 1RM today like I've never hit it before. I'm going to PR on squat, deadlift, bench, anything, okay? And then I'll still run through that wall. Like, that is a 10 out of 10. So basically, if you're like falling 8 to 10, so we use that scale to auto-regulate based on the original variable we talked about, which is flexible periodization, okay? And again, so if I'm going to come in and it's Monday and I'm an 8 or a 9 on the Perceived Recovery Status Scale, I might do my heavy day that day. However, if I come in and instead, for example, a 7, I'm probably going to do my moderate day. If I come in and I'm a 5 or if I'm like a 6, I do my light day. If I come in and I'm a 4, you probably should just walk. I mean, that's active recovery day. That's Normatec day. So the point is that, like, if you fall below a 5, we have research and we're going to be publishing soon. You might be at the point of no return, especially if you're coming to that several days. You may not even recover. So that's kind of the overview of this, of the auto-regulation that we talked about. So let's sum this up, guys, for you for this week. So basically, we talked this week about auto-regulation on Muscle PhD Academy. We said that basically when you periodize your training, number one, you want to point out is that you want to have a game plan for the week. You should not go in without a plan. Not having a plan, you guys have all heard it, it's a cliche, but not having a plan is a plan to what? A plan to fail. But you go in with a plan that is flexible, okay? I get that you guys are hardcore. I totally understand it, okay? That's why, that's why you're here, that's why you're studying, that's why you're working so hard. But if you have a heavy day on Monday and you feel, and you're like a 6 on your perceived recovery, that's not the day you should do your heavy day. You do your lighter day that day. If on Wednesday you're an 8 or a 9, that's the day you do your hardcore day. Does it make sense? Then, as far as auto-regulating within a training session itself, your performance is going to dictate how you actually train that day. So if you go in and you're supposed to do 3 sets of 10 with 315 on a squat, but you really know that you're going in there and you're supposed to be close to your 10 RM on each set. So if you go in on that first set and you hit 7 reps, you're going to adjust down. Don't just be hardcore. Dr. Mann's research showed that you need to adjust down and you actually make more gains. On the other hand, if you hit 10 repetitions and you could project that you could have got 13, go up probably about 5 pounds, okay? So adjust yourself in real time within that bandwidth. So that's the overall questions that we had. We're going to now take your guys' questions and answers relative to auto-regulation. I'm going to tell you right now, I think auto-regulation is freaking awesome. I think it's the wave of the future. It is periodization. I think that if you're not auto-regulating, you're selling yourself short, and that training should always, always, always be individualized, customized, right? if I took this jacket right now and I put it on Andy, well, actually Andy and I are probably around the same height and weight, so it might fit him and Paul too. But if I were to go and put this on Matt Sharp, who's our director of research, he wouldn't be able to zip it up, right? So so again, customize the program to you. So now, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get into your questions and answers, or your questions, and I'm gonna answer them.
Okay. Your opinion on heart rate variability for your training?
Heart rate variability, great question. And you guys can call the people out who asked or not. But
so there's Ricky Wilfit.
Ricky Wilfit. So Ricky Wilfit asks, what's your thought on heart rate variability? Intriguingly enough, we're using heart rate variability with professional athletes. So Matt Stefan, we call him Country. Basically, we have a device that can look at the physiological parameters, and one of those is heart rate variability. Let me explain heart rate variability. Basically, when a lot of variability in your heart beats when you beat, between beats, is basically means that your heart rate's being more controlled by parasympathetic activity. It's like rest and digest. If you have low variability, it indicates that sympathetic activity is high. Now, if I'm at rest and my sympathetic activity is high all the time, it means I'm likely overreached and possibly overtrained. And so what that means is, like, if I wake up and have very high heart rate variability, I'm more sympathetic, and it basically means that I'm not going to perform as well, likely. So basically, yeah, I think heart rate variability is a very good way that you can auto-regulate, and I do recommend that.
So, linear versus daily undulated periodization for auto-regulation.
Linear versus daily undulated periodization for auto-regulation. So linear periodization is essentially more, traditionally speaking, when I might have a block where for a whole month I'm focusing on strength, or I might start with a block where for a whole month I'm focusing on a hypertrophy. That's like 8 to 12 reps, supersets, giant sets, short rest period lengths, very nauseating workouts. And then for a month I'm going to focus on strength. If that whole month I'm only focusing on strength, or I'm only focusing on hypertrophy, it's harder to auto-regulate from one session to the next. So almost all my sessions are like strength-centric instead of like lighter days. But what you would do is auto-regulate in that sense on more lower volume days. You're going to do when you're not feeling as well. But where you're going to auto-regulate on a linear cycle is going to be within the session itself. What do I mean? Again, you're going to use that scale as like, how many repetitions do I have left? And you're going to auto-regulate based on that. Like, I could have totally got 3 more reps. Okay, so you're going to scale your weight up during that session. If you're doing daily undulated periodization, which basically means you scale those monthly blocks into single sessions, what that means is that Monday you have a heavy day, Wednesday light day, Friday moderate day. You would regulate based on the day on how you feel. So you can go on a much higher level of auto-regulation, I think, on a daily schedule than you can, say, on a linear schedule, but I'd use it on both. Someone goes, Victor Garati goes, talk about the ketogenic dieting, please. Ketogenic diet, please. I mean, ketogenic diet, 75% of your diet's fat, 25% protein, 5% carbs. If you don't respond to carbs very well, I highly recommend it. If you don't want to be hungry, I highly recommend it. Carlos Giovanni Hurtado. Did I pronounce that right, Carlos? Carlos Giovanni Hurtado asks, hypertrophy training, 10 reps, superset with high reps, 15 plus reps, same muscle, versus sets of hypertrophy 10 reps, only with short breaks without supersets. Carlos, the answer to your question is that on the first one, the much higher repetition, you would be tapping more into the type 1 fibers. So you get more hypertrophy in like the type 1 fibers. The other supersets, you would definitely tap some in the type 1 fibers, but not as much. You more preferentially hypertrophy the type 2 fibers, the larger fast switch fibers. The thing is, most of us don't focus on the type 1 fibers because we think they're not as responsible for hypertrophy, but think when you've hit a plateau. When you've plateaued, you can still tap into those type 1s. So I would recommend using that at a plateau. And again, if you're a bodybuilder, tap into all the muscle fibers you can. Have some days where heavy supersets, and have some days where you're going much higher repetitions. And if you're auto-regulating, do the higher repetitions on that lighter day.
So, concurrent training for older individuals.
Great question. Concurrent training for older individuals.
Yes, Brian Herb asked this question, and he's looking more at the fact that wants to stay competitive as an older individual, but also wants to reap the longevity benefits of strength training.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's going to all depend, and I want to preface this, all depend is like, when we talk about elderly individuals, if you have someone who's like elderly and untrained, I mean, you know, the cardio and the resistance training is going to be super beneficial, period. The thing to understand is with aging, VO2 max goes down and strength goes down. So for longevity, you're going to want to train both your cardiovascular system as well as your muscular system. So I definitely recommend, and that's what concurrent training is, everybody, that Brian Herb just talked about. Concurrent training itself is the combination of endurance training and resistance training. I highly recommend with aging doing both, because you want to have endurance capacity, you want to strengthen your heart, and you also want to strengthen your muscular system. You want to go through phases though on what you're focusing on, so periodize. So if you're a beginner, do both, and don't worry about separating them out. But as you become more specialized in more resistance training, go through sessions where, like, for a month your main focus is more the resistance training component, and you're maybe tapering back some of the cardio or doing more HIIT-based cardio, and then the following month, if you're trying to step up your endurance, possibly taper on the resistance training and step up the endurance. Because when you try and focus on everything, you're not going to accomplish as much, and studies just show that, right? So they always say it like, you know, if you have a cheetah, right, and the cheetah is going after, like, you know, a bunch of different animals at once, they won't catch any of them. Same thing with concurrent training. The problem is trying to manage the resistance training and manage the endurance training. If you do too much at once, you'll overreach and overtrain. So try and cycle between months on what your focus is and taper back on the other. Christian Restrepo says, is autoregulation necessary if I deload for 7 days following 6-week programs? Yes, Christian, because during those 6-week programs, you're going to want to auto-regulate. Because if you're, look, I'm telling you right now, I can bring anyone in ASPI right now and in a day make them feel like crap by just destroying them. 6 weeks is more than enough time to beat the living daylights out of yourself to where you're going to need to auto-regulate. And you know, like anything, the more trained you are, the more you're going to have to push the edge. And if you're going to push the edge, you know, you can't live on the edge, right? As much as like myself, Paul, and Andy like that, you can't live on the edge. You got to have to back off a little bit and take a view, right? Take a bird's eye view. And so, yeah, I would say absolutely.
That's a good one. Ketogenic diet when you've had a gallbladder removed.
So that's a heavily like clinical question. You know, obviously most of the studies that we do is not underneath that situation. So that's something that I would definitely like consult your doctor on as far as the gallbladder and see what you can actually do. Obviously there's a lot of benefits with ketogenic dieting. For you, it might just be a lower carbohydrate diet. You know, you may not be able to handle as high of fats, unfortunately. But in that situation, supplemental ketones, if you went low carb and supplement it with ketones, You can get a lot of the benefits, lower carb but with not as much fat. In supplementing with ketones, you're going to get those benefits that you would get because you may not be able to elevate the ketones as readily. Christian, you're welcome, man. Absolutely. Thanks for coming by. How does alcohol, Jeremy Newell says, how does alcohol affect muscle protein synthesis? I'll tell you what, I wish it elevated it, right? But here's the thing, Jeremy, that's a question we all have, right? Because, I like wine. From California, I say it every single time. Actually, I just got a Chianti. Yeah, I did.
Did you get a Chianti?
I did, yeah. So,
I like it.
based on Andy's recommendation, I'm gonna start, getting into the Italian wines. If you wine, like a glass of wine a day, right? A glass of wine a day is gonna keep you healthy, and overall it's gonna lower your stress. I would imagine it's gonna be good for overall protein synthesis and muscle growth. If you're gonna train hard right now, and you're gonna go out and get obliterated because your friend's birthday, that's probably not going to be good for protein synthesis. And I don't need to pull a lot of studies to back up what I'm saying, but they are there. Jesse Shaw, oh absolutely, this Dr. Jesse Shaw. So actually Jesse Shaw came into the lab. What's up, Jesse? Dr. Shaw came in the lab the other day, and he's awesome. We're actually going to be teaming up with him on taking biopsies and things of that nature. He goes, and so yeah, the song "I'm at a New Level." I feel like we should play that right now. Jesse Shaw is going to take us to a whole new level. So, concern for increased fat and absence of gallbladder would put a strain on liver. Would want to periodically check, and also would be a concern for those with coagulopathies and liver damage. Okay, cool. So, Jesse is a doctor. I said consult your doctor, so he had a real good insight on that. Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. Let's see. Yeah. Ask the question.
So, does caffeine negatively affect metabolism long term?
Oh, does caffeine negatively affect your metabolism long term? Yeah. So, really good question. The answer is it helps your metabolism long term, at least in like 10-week studies. Okay. Paul wants me to get like down to the point on questions, so I'm just going to say yes, it could be good for your metabolism. So I'm getting straight to the point. Now at least I have to still go into some literature on this though. So anyway, Devuti did a study where he took people through and basically they were like more caffeine naive, and meaning they weren't taking a lot of caffeine, and he gave them caffeine probably 300-400 milligrams daily, right? It's right about where Andy's at. And after 30 minutes from waking up. But anyway, yeah, so he did this study, and he found that like people who are caffeine naive, when they had caffeine during the dieting phase, maintained their metabolism. Cool, right? And then when they actually went back to maintenance calories, they their metabolism was sustained. So like when you're done dieting and your metabolism's like crash, the caffeine's sustaining. Now there's a key point to this, right? If you're taking tons of caffeine every single day and you're like, I'm going to use caffeine to elevate my metabolism during a hard dieting phase, probably not going to work. But if you save caffeine for your hardest dieting phases, that is going to be helpful. So if you are a bodybuilder and you're doing a contest, you might want to save that to elevate your metabolism during those last 4 hard weeks and then coming out of the contest. Next question. Any
Do you have to necessarily be in a deficit in order to follow a keto diet?
No. In fact, basically the ketogenic dieting stuff that we talked about, when we talk about ketogenic dieting type stuff, most of the research was actually done like eucalorically. But let me say this, things do change when you're in a deficit. Okay? So for example, if 75% of my fat needs to be, 75% of my diet needs to be fat, And keep asking your questions, guys. We're going to take about 2 or 3 more questions. So keep asking, share the love, everything like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 75% of your diet is fat when you're eucalorically. If I diet, I'm actually tapping into my own body fat, right? So if I'm dieting and maybe I spend 500 extra calories from cardio, but I'm keto, technically that's fat. Meaning I might be able to get my fat down to 65%, and still fall within those ratios. But the answer is yes, you can be in calorie maintenance. We did a study with resistance training athletes. It was accepted as Journal Strength and Conditioning Research. It's going to be published soon, where we put people in maintenance. They lost fat, they gained muscle at the same time. Hey, Doc. Catherine Johnson asked, is there a day limit to caffeine? If there is, Andy's going to find it.
Gotten very close to that one.
Yeah, if there is, Andy's going to find it. I mean, there's a limit to anything, right? I mean, I'd probably recommend, a couple hundred milligrams a day, really. Jason Dames asks, what's up, Jason? He says, hey, Doc, what's up? Do you know of any other MCT powder that's a little more cheaper than Quest? No, not really. And I don't know for the quality. I mean, I'll say it's, that's a phenomenal MCT powder, and the things it's plated on, it's probably more expensive because it's plated on soluble corn fiber. So most MCTs are plated on carbs, which kind of defeats the purpose. This is plated on soluble corn fiber, which technically is a carb, but it's converted into short chain fatty acids. So, okay. So I'm gonna take 2 more questions here. Orlando asks, how often should you vary the structure of a particular microcycle, i.e. rep range and weight? The answer to your question is, well trained, then what you're going to end up doing is you could change it up every 2 weeks to every month. If you're highly trained, I would change the microcycle up on a weekly basis. Guys, for you guys who don't know that terminology, your microcycle is like your split, right? So if I'm whatever your training split for that week is a microcycle. It's variation within a 1 week period. So Trey Harlan goes, is MCT powder better than oil? There's a lot of, yes. And the reason why I'm going to say that is because you can take more without messing your stomach up. But as far as the MCTs, no. But it doesn't hurt your stomach as much, so you can take in higher amounts. Okay, so last question. Olaf asks, hey Doc, love these sessions and what you do. I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. What's more optimal for hypertrophy? Hitting both type 1 and type 2 fibers during every workout, or focusing on one at a time during different periods? I'm going to pull a poll here. It's better to do them in one workout, but then I'm going to go back to me and I'm going to go, obviously it's really complex, okay? So anyway, no one's really done that research but us. We have pilot research showing that combining repetition ranges could be more beneficial for hypertrophy and strength. That's why burnouts work well. So even if you do a heavy day, if you do a burnout, research show that's actually more beneficial. So we have some announcements?
Good question. One last.
Okay, good question.
It's a good one.
So, what is better for body comp? A ketogenic diet or a moderate carb, moderate fat, high protein diet?
Great question. A moderate fat, moderate protein, moderate
fat, moderate protein. So like the traditional bodybuilder diet.
Oh, okay, got you. Understood. The answer is it's all individualized. Okay, so for me, for example, with my metabolic state, I train once a day right now. My steps are fairly high. I probably get 12 to 15,000 steps a day. If my volume's the way it currently is, which is decent, ketogenic dieting. If I'm training 2 to 3 times a day, and I go through those stages sometimes, I could actually respond to both. But I need really high volumes to be able to utilize the carbs. if you're Trey Kidd, who we work with, I mean, to be honest, I would go with the carb diet because he can handle the carbs. If you respond good to both, it's based on your schedule. So if you can't get high meal frequency because of your travel schedule or your work schedule, hands down, without a doubt, keto. Because in between meals, the ketones may provide an anabolic stimulus and they can prevent you from going down. But if you can eat frequently and you can schedule yourself around that and you respond to both, go with what you like. That's what I would say.